Alright, so I'm going to begin the final part now, and what I'll be doing here is just adding some color. And there's multiple ways to do this. There's not one right or wrong way, but I like to start by glazing in some of the basic local colors, and that's kind of just like the base tone or hue of them. And there's several different layer modes you can use to kind of get results that will kind of be conclusive regarding that. And my favorites I like to start off with is the color mode layer. I make a new layer for it and then kind of use a peach type color, and it kind of fills all the values up with that color, but it generally looks kind of flat. So you need to go back in and do a lot of manual painting over that, or use overlay layers to bring out a more varied color palette. It's always easier if you already have kind of like a toned background and then you have to sketch over it, because I guess it just mimics a traditional underpainting in that regard. So yeah, I just turn the painting on and off, or the layers, to kind of get the best results, and then I kind of paint all on one layer when I get the base tone in there. I'm not quite sure what the color of the outfit will be. I mean, I'm gonna go with this golden, almost type of brass type color to start off with, and see if my imagination finds something worth working with at that point. Yeah, I do a lot of trial and error trying to get the skin tones a little bit more dynamic. It's completely almost irrelevant to at this stage, but I don't know. I was having fun with it and kind of wanted to experiment around with it a little bit, so that's what I did. Just want those shadows in there a little bit more harsh, so I kind of block them in with a round brush, and then soften it up and do a little bit of smudging to kind of blend it all in. You know, the foundation for the face was already there, so it's almost kind of just like adding makeup on like a mannequin or something like that. That's how I look at it anyways. But it's always good to at least have some type of base reference out and working with to get the general idea there. And I'm not too worried either if it's going to go out of the bounds of the lines of the drawing or the head shape. I'm just kind of glazing in the color, almost kind of like airbrushing it. Trick is always to getting the right age of somebody is always a challenge. Sometimes if you just add one extra little shadow, curve, or line, you know, you can add 10 years onto a person's face. Anyway, I just block in a little swash around the character to kind of make it pop out a little bit. This is you know, again, it's a the color has a low saturation, and it's a fairly low value as well. You can see on the color picker over there. And it just will help kind of make me pop the sketch out a little bit better. Kind of like if you had a, you know, a traditional sketchbook and you just, you know, take a color pencil or a watercolor brush and just etch around the character a little bit. I don't zoom in terribly far and correct it out and make these beautiful glossy type eyes on this or anything, but I'm just gonna try to suggest as much of it as I can without committing too much time to it. I do want the nose to read. It was looking a bit flat, so I'm kind of doing that now, and as well as the crevice of the mouth. Sculpting faces helps a lot too. If you're into any kind of sculpting or digital sculpting, even do that enough, and this part eventually becomes a lot easier. It serves as a good practice. I don't know what part of the face I find the most challenging. On some characters it ends up being the eyes. Others, depending on the angle, is often the nose. And the mouth is always presents its fair share of challenges as well. I never find it extremely easy. There's some paintings or illustrations. I've spent like 5-6 hours trying to get a face right, and I'll be proud of it, and then I'll come back a week later and look at it. Won't be satisfied at all. So sometimes it just feels like a never-ending circle. Look at that. She's got that dead eye right there. Her right or her left eye right now. Need to work on that. Stink eye, I guess. I hope that works itself out. It's always funny the things you just notice when you're looking back at something, a playback of your own painting. But trying to add a little bit of life, and then they were just so dead. I'm fairly happy with the skin tones in general at this stage. Although her left side of the face is a little bit more flat than the one in more shadow. And this more or less was just capturing the face. I don't go into I don't spend this much time on the armor of this one or kind of like the rendering of the details on that. I kind of get the face where I need it to, and then half-ass the armor a bit. And then again, I'm just playing with extra tones, and that helps unify the whole thing too sometimes as well. Trying to have the corner of that face just pick up some more light, and so sometimes I'll just make a selection, fill it in with a brighter color, and then go back in and erase where I don't need it. That's what's going on there. I think for the most part it did work. The face is the brightest point of the sketch here, so it now pops right out. I'm back again. I finally go and tackle the hair, something I've dread, and you'll see me struggle with it here. I try to use some of these Photoshop, the more natural bristle brushes, get a base going. Because you don't want to start out and go and paint every strand of hair. That's just not that's not economical. It'll waste a lot of time doing that. You want to think of it in broad forms, kind of like volumetric. And if it's black hair, I'll tone it whatever the environment has it in, kind of picking up some of the lights. And then blues and purples is often used a lot to kind of accent that as well when it's really dark hair. So that's kind of what I'm filling with at the moment. And then eventually, because the hair is all that way, and I like the slight tilt in her head, but it kind of gets awkward with the way I have the hair right now. So I fix that and have it going in the back in the final pass. It's a lot of trial and error. Nothing fancy. But I like using not an excessive amount of brushes, but just enough to give some variety on the edges. Because it takes a lot of manual work if you're going to paint an image with just one brush. I mean, it's totally possible and doable, but it'll look like you almost like rendered everything with just one brush. So that's where I like to use multiple brushes or even some custom brushes, is just to add some variety in the brush mark. See, I actually liked the color of the hair and how the color of it and stuff came out. I just didn't like the shape of it or how it was resting over. Is it blowing? Is it not? Is it just covering the shoulder because I didn't want to paint it? A ton of things. So I'll have to fix that. Add a little bit of detail on this armor. every painting's kind of got a hierarchy. So in this one, I would say, the first priority would be the face, the second, the armor, or the cape, and whatnot. So that's why I'll spend less time on it, and it's not as emphasized. And again, I play with colors and patterns. I want the colors of the character to ultimately reflect a lot of the personality of her, and even though it's kind of like a lot of like healers or shrine maiden type of female characters in video games and stuff are often really bright and pinks, purples, reds, even blues. I guess blues and whites. I try to go for a more reserved look. A lot of black and white to kind of reflect that part of her personality with that she is kind of a lot of things are just black and white. She has a trouble finding the middle road on something, so she more goes in an extreme way in one direction or the other a lot. And that's me saying that now there is all kind of hypothetical, since I don't really have a story or a complete world or anything. This is all stuff I just kind of imagine as I go when I'm trying to think about how to practically apply the color. What's the story behind this big gem in the head? I mean, every part of her should reflect either the world she's in or something about her. So I honestly didn't come up with a story to reflect that at this point. But I could it could be like it could contain like the tear of a dragon, and or embodiment of like several thousand years of souls. You can kind of bullshit and tie anything in. So I don't know. It's fun to do that, but I try not to let it take over my mind entirely when I'm doing this, because I do have to focus a lot on the technique at this point. And then just going back on, I think, a final little layer and pumping up some of the colors. Adding a little bit blue over the purple makes the background look a lot more dynamic, and not as flat. And then finally I fixed the hair here, and I just kind of pulled the strokes out both by smudge and paint, and now I'm just adding a bit of the highlights to show some volume on it, and I think the hair looks a lot better this way. As you can see, I kept her suit fairly simple as well, just using reds, whites, and blacks, but I don't want her to come off kind of too much like a Nazi or something like that, so I'll have to evaluate that and see how it turns out in the final. Anyways, thanks for watching this part of the tutorial, and I'm looking forward to having you back on the next section. We'll begin the silhouettes and blocking out and figuring out the actual design of this character.